So I was listening not too long ago to a broadcast about recent developments in agriculture and future demographic trends. So the estimates are that by either 2100 or 100 years from now, I can't remember which, the population of planet Earth is going to increase from, it's around 7 billion today, and it's going to get to 10 or 12 billion 100 years from now, let's say. So we know that the populations on planet Earth that are the most advanced technologically, the most self sufficient, the most educated, and the most wealthy are either staying the same in population or they're decreasing. The countries or nations that meet the criteria that I just mentioned are basically Europe, North America, Japan, and Australia. A few others. So, those countries, the only countries on planet Earth that can take care of themselves, so the whites, essentially, the people of European descent, so Eastern, Western, Central Europe, the places that they settled, and then also the Japanese and to a lesser extent the Chinese. Those populations are either holding equal or they're decreasing. All the other populations on planet Earth, the ones who can't take care of themselves, the ones who need aid, the ones who are conflict ridden, they're all going to decrease, or excuse me, they're all going to increase. They're going to double in size. So, since those populations aren't going to be able to feed themselves, apparently it's up to Westerners to figure out how to do that. This kind of thinking is exactly how we got into this problem in the first place, where the developing world, the underdeveloped world, you can call it the developing world if you don't want to put a stigma on them, but it's really the underdeveloped world. The people that, even though they have access to the same technology at this point, honestly, that everybody else does, they can't hold it together. They can't shut down conflict in their own societies. They can't take care of their problems, so they need a handout. And enterprising Westerners who are compassionate want to take care of the rest of the world. The problem is that if you can't take care of yourself already and someone comes along with a handout, you have no incentive to improve yourself to the point where you are self-sufficient. So why is the population of Africa and the worst parts of Asia continuing to increase way past what are already unsustainable levels? I haven't looked this up specifically, but I would be pretty confident in saying that the population of India cannot feed itself. If we took India and we launched it off into space in a bubble and it was just floating through space on its own, I do not think that they would have enough food to feed their people. I'm pretty sure that they import a lot of lentils and beans from places like Canada. And I know that Egypt, for example, has 80 million people in it. Its population has skyrocketed over the last 100 years, and I'm pretty sure that they import a lot of food from the United States. So, this kind of stuff is only going to continue to get worse, and there are Westerners who want to say, well, these poor people, they can't feed themselves, we're just going to have to, well, they don't even really look at it like that. They just say population's increasing and we're going to have to grow more food because there's not enough food for the people who are already around. Well, what they should be thinking is, how can we reduce those populations or get them to hold steady at their current levels? So how can we do population control? These are the same people, mind you, who believe that we should have parks and wild spaces and animal sanctuaries. But they don't put their money where their mouth is and say that something's going to have to give. They probably think it would be a good thing if Western populations would decrease, but for the rest of the world, let them fuck as much as they want without any kind of birth control. Let their populations triple, quadruple, or 10 times as many. So this kind of stuff really bothers me for a lot of different reasons. I think the main one is that it is truly the white genocide that people talk about. If you're saying in 100 years Africa and Asia are going to double or triple in population size and we have to worry about how to feed them, that sounds like white genocide, because I think the immigration isn't going to go away. So you're really looking at a future in which the technologically advanced, highly educated portion must inevitably be swamped and overwhelmed by immigrants from the rest of the world. So that kind of bothers me. The other thing is, it's bad for the people in the developing parts of the world. If you have your university and it receives immigrants from all over the world, from Africa and Asia, and they can come to your university in the West and get educated, they really don't have any incentive to go home. Not only do they not have an incentive to go home, but the universities in their own countries are competing against the best ones in the West. So why is the smartest African and the smartest Asian going to stay in their country, get a worse education, make worse money once they do get their job, and live a worse quality of life? They're just not going to do it. They're going to go to the West, they're going to stay in the West. So you're depriving the rest of the populations in those countries of their best and brightest individuals. You're taking the smartest people out of their university systems and making sure that they're never going to produce anything. So what they end up having to do is to hire lower quality people from the West to go and work in those places through government subsidy. They should be developing their own organic institutions at their own pace without regard to the West. Say, forget it, we're gonna do our own damn thing, we're gonna build it up organically on our own. And then they would have self-respect and they would have dignity, and their societies would evolve and eventually probably catch up with us. But as long as this humanitarian bullshit handout stuff keeps going on, and as long as the unrestrained immigration keeps going on and the brain drain and all this shit, you are going to get to a point 100 years from now where my great-grandchildren are going to be an extreme minority in a world where everyone's coming to the West looking for a handout. That handout's probably going to be getting smaller and smaller over time. And eventually, if there's an interruption in the food supply because of natural disasters, then, 6 billion of those 12 billion people on planet Earth are going to starve to death in a year. And that doesn't sound like a future that I want. I think it's probably not a future that you want either. So, that's why it's important for us, you and I, if you're listening to this, to be involved in politics, to be involved in intellectual and political discourse, and to try to change some people's minds before it's too fucking late.